Welcome to No Secret Gardening. I still remember a winter about 6 years ago when I stood on my porch looking at a sea of brown, mushy stems. I had spent a fortune at the local nursery on plants that were labeled as winter-ready, but they didn't last a week after the first real freeze. It was a hard lesson, and it's why I'm so passionate about helping you avoid that same frustration. The truth is, the big box stores often sell showcase plants that have been forced in a greenhouse. They look perfect on the shelf, but they have no muscle to handle your actual backyard. Today, I'm giving you a measurable promise. I will show you how to have vibrant blooms for 100 days straight, even when the ground feels like a brick. You don't need a greenhouse, and you don't need a miracle. You just need the right plants and a bit of protective strategy. Before we dive in, I want you to memorize this pocket rule because it will save your garden this season. Dry feet, deep mulch, winter colors, never sulk. I'm going to repeat that throughout this video because it is the foundation of everything we do in the cold. If your plants have wet feet in the winter, the ice will expand and crush their roots from the inside out. But if you keep them drained and tucked in, they will surprise you with their strength. Let's start with our first practical proof right now. I call this the finger warmth test, and you should do this before you even think about planting. Go to your garden bed and stick your finger 2 inches into the soil. If the soil is muddy and sticks to your skin like clay, it's a death trap for winter blooms. If it feels crumbly and cool but not saturated, you're ready. The second proof is the snap test for your existing plants. If you aren't sure if a plant survived the last frost, gently bend a small outer twig. If it snaps cleanly and looks green or white inside, the plant is just sleeping. If it's flexible and mushy, we need to change our approach. By the 1-minute mark here, we are already talking about our first heavy hitter, the hellebore, often called the Lenten rose. This is the ultimate anti-showcase plant. When everything else is giving up, the hellebore is just getting started. But here is what the seller doesn't tell you. If you buy one that is already in full, lush bloom in December, it's likely been pampered. You want the one that looks a bit rugged, maybe even a little sleepy. That's the one that has been hardened off and will actually survive in your zone 5 to 7 garden. Usually, hellebores are known for their incredible nutrient profile in the soil, as they help maintain microbial activity even in low temperatures. They are tough, but they have one blind spot. They hate standing water. If you are in a scenario where your backyard has a low spot that stays soggy, do not plant them there. Instead, move them to a slight slope or a raised bed. If you are in an apartment with a balcony, hellebores are fantastic in deep pots, provided the pot is frost-proof. Now, let's look at our decision map for this first stage. If you are in zone 5 or 6, where the ground freezes solid, your focus is 100% on root protection. You need 4 inches of mulch, no excuses. If you are in zone 8 or 9, where it frosts but doesn't stay frozen, your biggest enemy isn't the cold, it's the sun. A warm afternoon sun after a freezing night can cook the leaves of a frozen plant. In that scenario, you want to plant your winter blooms where they get morning shade but afternoon light. I've seen so many people lose their winter pansies because they watered them like it was July. In the winter, the plant's metabolism slows down. It doesn't want a soaking, it wants a sip. If the soil is scorching or frozen, the leaf suffers even with water. But the most dangerous thing you can do right now is something almost everyone does in January, thinking they are being helpful. Alert about an error to be revealed in the next part. The master error I see every January, the one that kills more winter gardens than the frost itself, is what I call the cleaning itch. When we see those brown, withered leaves on our perennials, our instinct is to grab the shears and tidy up. I did this for years. I thought I was helping the plant breathe, But in reality, those dead, crispy leaves are a natural thermal blanket. They trap a layer of air right against the crown of the plant, keeping it just a few degrees warmer. When you cut them back in the middle of winter, you are essentially stripping the coat off your plant in a blizzard. Usually, the plants that survive best are the ones that look a bit messy until March. So, leave the shears in the shed. Now, let's talk about a plant that is a true warrior for zones 6 through 9, the winter jasmine. It's often confused with forsythia, but it's much tougher. It has these bright, optimistic yellow blooms on green stems that look like they belong in spring, not January. But here's the secret. Most people plant them and then wonder why they look thin and scraggly. The showcase version is always bushy and perfect, but in your backyard it needs a bit of a strategic lean. These plants love to cascade. If you have a retaining wall or a steep bank, that is where they shine. If you are in a scenario where you have a small backyard or just a balcony, you might be tempted by those beautiful winter pansies. They are the budget-friendly way to get color, but they are often misunderstood. I used to think they were disposable, but I've learned that pansies are the ultimate resurrection plant if you treat them right. This leads us to our next practical proof, the ice cube test. If you aren't sure if your pots or beds have the drainage needed for winter, place a few large ice cubes on the soil surface near the plant. If they melt and the water sits there like a puddle for more than 10 minutes, your drainage is failing. In winter, standing water is a death sentence. Remember our rule? Dry feet, deep mulch, winter colors never sulk. I can't emphasize the dry feet part enough. If that water doesn't move, the roots will rot before the first thaw. Let's look at our decision map for soil types. If you are dealing with heavy clay soil, the kind that feels like Play-Doh, you cannot plant directly into the ground in winter and expect a bloom. You need to mound up. Create a small hill of compost and grit and plant into that. This ensures the crown of the plant is above the flood zone. If you have sandy soil, you have the opposite problem. Your soil drains so fast that the roots might actually dehydrate during a dry freeze. In that case, your deep mulch needs to be even thicker, at least 5 inches of shredded bark to hold that tiny bit of necessary moisture in. I've had subscribers tell me they bought winter hardy plants that died in 2 weeks. Usually, this happens because the plant was pushed in a greenhouse with high nitrogen fertilizer. It has soft, lush growth that hasn't seen a day of real wind or cold. When you take it home, it goes into shock. This is why I always tell you to look for the ugly plant at the nursery. Look for the one that has thick, woody stems and maybe even a little bit of frost singe on the very tips. That plant has been outside. It knows what's coming. It's built the internal sugars, essentially a natural antifreeze, that it needs to survive. If you are in a Zone 5 garden, your blooms might be more about structure and berries right now, like the winterberry holly. It's an important source of food for birds, and it adds a pop of red that looks incredible against the white snow. But remember, for the winterberry, you need a male and a female plant, or you'll get no berries at all. It's a common blind spot that leaves gardeners wondering why their showcase holly is just a green bush with no red. As we move through the coldest weeks, keep watching your mulch. Wind can strip it away, leaving the soil exposed. No shelter in the soil, no drama in the leaf, but in this case, the drama is the bad kind. If the soil is exposed to the freezing wind, it pulls the moisture right out of the roots. I lost a whole row of lavender once because I thought the snow would be enough of a blanket. It wasn't. The wind got to the roots first. I spent a lot of money until I discovered the secret adjustment that changes everything about how a plant handles a deep freeze. It's a 10-second rule I use every single evening when the temperature starts to drop. The 10-second rule I mentioned is my secret weapon for the coldest nights. Every evening, before the sun goes down and the temperature really drops, I take 10 seconds to check the blanket of my most sensitive winter bloomers. I simply look to see if the mulch has shifted. If I see bare soil, I know that by morning the frost will have reached the roots. I just kick a little extra straw or bark over the base. It's a tiny habit, but it's the difference between a plant that thrives and one that vanishes by February. Remember, dry feet, deep mulch, winter colors never sulk. This isn't just a rhyme. It's your insurance policy against a brown garden. Now, if you want to take all the guesswork out of your seasonal transitions, I've put everything I've learned from my years of mistakes and successes into the guide No Secret Gardening. It's designed to help you plan not just for the winter, but for the entire year, ensuring you never waste money on a showcase plant that isn't built for your specific zone. It's the tool I wish I had when I was first starting out and losing half my garden every freeze. Let's talk about another winter star, the camellia. If you are in zone 7, 8, or 9, this is your winter royalty. But here is where people fail. They buy a camellia in full bloom, bring it home, and plant it in the middle of a windy lawn. Camellias are known for their strong nutrient profile and resilience, but they are forest edge plants. They want protection from the wind. If the winter wind hits those delicate buds, they will turn brown and fall off before they even open. If you are in a scenario with a windy backyard, plant your camellia near a fence or under the canopy of a larger evergreen. If you are a pot gardener or living in an apartment, don't feel left out. Your decision map is actually simpler. Because pots are above ground, they are more vulnerable to the freeze-thaw cycle. To prevent your pots from cracking and your plants from freezing, wrap your pots in burlap or even bubble wrap during the deepest freezes. It's not about looking pretty, it's about survival. And if the soil is scorching or frozen, the leaf suffers even with water. In a pot, this happens 5 times faster than in the ground. As we wrap up our winter plan, I want to give you a checklist of signs it's working. First, look at the center of the plant. If the new, tiny buds are tight, firm, and green, your plant is healthy and just waiting for its moment. Second, do the smell test. Scoop up a bit of soil from under the mulch. It should smell like clean earth. If it smells sour or like rotten eggs, your drainage has failed and you need to move that plant to higher ground immediately. Third, check the leaf firmness. A winter-hardy plant like a Bergenia or a hellebore should have leaves that feel like thick leather. If they feel like wet paper, the plant is struggling with too much moisture. Here is your strategic summary by environment. If you have full sun all day, stick with winter jasmine and certain hardy heathers. If you have partial shade, hellebores and camellias will be your best friends. If you are in a small backyard with heavy snow, focus on structure and berries like the winterberry holly and always keep that mulch deep. I've learned that the problem isn't your black thumb. The problem is usually the showcase plant that was never meant for your backyard. When you stop chasing the perfect look and start working with the plant's natural rhythm, gardening becomes a therapy instead of a chore. You save money, you save your peace of mind, and you finally get to see life blooming when the rest of the world is gray. If this helped you feel more confident about your winter garden, I'd love for you to join our community here at No Secret Gardening. Subscribe and hit that bell so we can keep growing together. And do me a favor, comment the word survivor below if you've ever had a plant surprise you by blooming in the snow. It helps me know which zones you all are growing in. Share this with a friend who thinks they can't grow anything in the cold. Let's prove them wrong. Grow with ease, smarts, and love. See you next time.